Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Let me tell you very quickly that this event is being streamed live. So whatever you say will be shared with, on the web with everyone, and our students and all over the world. Actually, as we speak, we have students in 90 countries now doing their co-ops, are with us, and some of them will be asking questions. I don't think, Nigel, you'll be able to answer all the questions today, but we have an agreement that you'll come back and you can do it also from your iPad. Let me take the opportunity to introduce, as you all know, and some of you have been talking about it, our school, our business school has been renamed or named the Damore McKim Business School, and we have received a very large and generous gift from two of our alumni. But let me take this opportunity to introduce our new dean, who just joined us, the dean of the Damore McKim Business School. Where is our dean, Hugh Courtney? Over there. He's a happy man. Welcome. You're welcome. Now, Nigel and I had a meeting this morning, and we were talking about, the international outlook and how it is no longer possible to think in any business about being only solely restricted to a region or indeed a nation. And you're going to hear from Nigel, and you're going to hear about his international outlook and his obviously domestic outlook. But let me take this opportunity to say what is also striking in our discussion is that this trajectory, this journey that Dunkin' Donuts had with, and it's striking to me because in many ways it mirrors what we have done, local, national, global. As I mentioned, we are in 90 countries now in terms of our co-ops. We have partnerships in terms of research and teaching all over the world. I just came back from Asia and Vietnam, and it is clearly the case that the thirst for higher education, US higher education, is enormous, and especially for this kind of higher education that is blending the world experience with the classroom experience. What I mean by that, the experiential learning, is really something that is very appealing to the world. So now, clearly the opportunities worldwide are enormous, but at the same time, it is clear that the primary beneficiary of everything we do there is going to be the Boston and the area here. So this interplay between the local and the global is something to always keep in mind, and that's what Nigel is going also to discuss here today. So without further ado, I'm not going to introduce Nigel, but Bill O'Reilly is going to do it, and I'm going to ask him to join me at the podium. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Bill O'Reilly. I'm a partner at WilmerHale in the real estate practice, and on behalf of the firm, thank you for joining us. WilmerHale is proud to be continued as a host and sponsor of the CEO Breakfast Forum, and I want to thank our co-sponsors Deloitte and the Massachusetts Business Roundtable for their participation, and also like to express our appreciation to Northeastern University for arranging this fabulous ongoing series. Although WilmerHale has been an ongoing partner with the CEO Breakfast for nearly a decade, this is my first opportunity to introduce the event's keynote speaker, and I am particularly excited to be a part of today's program. Through my years of practice, I've been involved with a number of retailers, and one of the things I've learned is that in retail, as you all know, brand is everything, and what a brand Dunkin's is. I've experienced that myself as someone who grew up in New England, and think of Dunkin's as not only a place to get a cup of coffee, but almost a way of life. And it's a true story. My brother has a 3-year-old Labrador Retriever named Dunkin, D-U-N-K-I-N. Nigel, I don't think you've received any royalties for that, but we consider it free advertising as well. So for those of us who think of Dunkin's as a way of life, it's true. So I'm Really delighted to introduce our speaker, Nigel Travis, President and Chief Executive Officer of Dunkin' Brands. Nigel was named Chief Executive Officer of Dunkin' Brands in January 2009 and assumed the role of President in October 2009 of Dunkin' Donuts. From 2005 through 2008, Nigel served as President and CEO of Papa John's. Under his leadership, Papa John's accomplished outstanding results with industry-leading comp sales. Prior to Papa John's, Nigel was with Blockbuster Inc. from 1994 to 2004, where he served in varying roles of responsibility, including President, Chief Operating Officer. Before that, Nigel was with Burger King, first as Senior Vice President of Human Resources and later as Managing Director for Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. In his various leadership roles at these public and highly successful companies, Nigel has proved time and again that he knows how to improve and build a business. As I'm sure you do, I look forward to hearing what he has to say. Nigel.
Good morning, everyone. So when I talk to our franchisees, I always start with a sporting thought or two, usually very current. Thank God the refs are back. That's the first thing. And secondly, tying in with the subject I'm going to talk about today, we've got a very important occasion this weekend, the Ryder Cup. So I just want to do a quick vote. Who's supporting America? Okay, right, who's supporting the team that's going to win? Okay, right, so now we've done that, we have to do the commercials. On here, even though this says Baskin-Robbins, you can use this in Dunkin' Donuts as a gift card. And of course, the world's best coffee. And one more commercial. I'm going to talk today about international. And Joseph and I had a great chat. We could have actually talked all morning because we share many of the same views and values. But I think one of the best articles I've read about the world and the international is in this week's Time magazine. And I think it's obviously timed to coincide with the Clinton Institute this week, and the United Nations been in session. But it's 5 ideas that are changing the world, and it's an optimistic view of the world. So I'd really encourage you to read this. It's a great article, and for the ladies in the room, you'll really like this because it's about women becoming great leaders in the world. So I suggest you read that. Okay, so this is one of the benefits of being a CEO. You get asked to talk about all kinds of subjects. Last time I was here, I talked about technology in this hotel. Today, it's a subject that's very close to my heart. It's about globalization. And that's very important to our brand. We have our 2 brands. We have 2 brands, Baskin-Robbins. And how many in the audience grew up with Baskin-Robbins? Most of you. Okay, so I'm kind of unique because I didn't, because I lived in the UK. And then, of course, we have Dunkin' Donuts, which is, as Joseph and Mike and Bill referred to, a real huge part of Boston. You only have to go on the duck boat tours to realize how important it is. And we actually have over 1,000 stores here in Massachusetts, so very important part of the Northeast. Anyway, our mission for both these brands is to be the premier global quick service restaurant franchisor. I won't talk about franchising today, a very important subject, but we're actually a small company because all the revenue comes through our franchisees. So we have over $8 billion in revenue through our franchisees, and we call that system-wide sales. But if you actually bring that all back to our royalties, we as a company, as I say, are very small. And then it carries on with a leading position in the coffee, bakery, and ice cream segments of the quick service restaurant category. So that's a little bit about what we want to be. So let's talk about international. We've been in international for a long time. We're back in the 1970s. Baskin-Robbins firstly started in the 70s, as did Dunkin' Donuts. We have great strengths in the countries you see there, Japan, Korea, Saudi Arabia, and Australia. And what's interesting about Dunkin', which is the much smaller of the 2 brands internationally, is I go around the world, and this is the first lesson of my comments this morning, and everyone tells me, do you remember the days that Dunkin' was in Israel? It was certainly in the UK. When I was at Burger King, I actually had Dunkin in the same gas stations as Burger King. No longer in the UK. So we can carry on. We were in Brazil. We were in many countries. So the point of that is international is difficult. You need resilience. And the one that I always use as a great example is McDonald's went into France 3 times before they made it work. So international is tough. And Joseph and I were talking earlier, I think too many companies say, hey, US and international. International is not a big blob. It is a series of different cultures and countries. And you have to think about it not just as something that's out there. So where are we now? We now have 17,000 stores. We have over 7,000 in international. A little bit about my background, and I'm going to bring these two together. You heard some of it from Bill. I'm fortunate that I've been involved in international for 35 years. The first part was in HR with several companies. Some Bill didn't mention. Rolls-Royce, Massey Ferguson, Kraft, Parker Hannifin. I've actually been working 42 years, so I'm not the job hopper it sounds. But I'm fortunate that I've had lots of stores, both domestic and international. When I was at Blockbuster, for instance, I had 9,000 corporate stores. And every single one of these great brands, I've learnt a lot, and I've had a lot of difficult experiences. And the way I always describe experience in international is you make a lot of mistakes. So again, international is difficult, so you make mistakes. This is where we are now in terms of Dunkin brands. We won't be testing you on this, so don't worry. But we're just about everywhere in the world. We're in 51 countries. You can see our real strengths are in Asia. We have over 5,000 stores in Asia. The Middle East is a real strength. In Europe, we actually have hardly anything. In fact, it's less than 1% of our profitability is in Europe. It's a good time for us to invest in Europe, by the way. And Latin America we see as a huge growth opportunity. Again, I could spend hours talking about all these different parts of the world, but basically we're very global with both brands. So what is our strategy? This is a simplified strategy. Basically, we have some very mature countries, Korea, Japan, Middle East, and Korea obviously is a country that's interesting because we have nearly 1,000 Dunkin' Donuts, and you'll see an ad later relating to that, and 1,000 Baskin-Robbins. Middle East, despite all the turmoil, is a huge opportunity for us to keep growing on a very strong base. And one of the things we were talking about this morning, people get all excited about the problems at the moment. I've seen it like 3 times before. I mean, it goes up and down, and the president was absolutely right. This is a bump in the road. So remember that. You have to take the long-term view when you look at international. We see several countries that we can really grow. Russia for both brands, Germany, which we see as the central part of our Dunkin' Donuts European strategy, China, again, fascinating place, great people, and, you know, a lot of people say nasty things about China. China will dominate, I tell you. And we're very excited about the future in China. And as I said before, Latin America is boom time at the moment. And then the last thing I would talk about is we see a lot of markets that we can really start off and grow. Mexico, where we've been before, we see as a great opportunity. We've got Baskin there. Dunkin' will probably go there next year. Vietnam, we've got Baskin. Dunkin's just starting. And then India, we've had for many years over 400 Baskin. We've just started with a very good partner on the Dunkin side, and that's going to be huge for us. And we're also looking at Brazil. So this is really the heart of my presentation. I've got some random thoughts. If I bring it all together, is international, be careful, and it should be subtitled, no assumptions. So let me go through these points one by one. And when we were talking this morning, I said that I've often thought about writing a book called Only in the US. Now, I've actually moved to the US twice in my life. I'm actually a US citizen as well as a British citizen. But the most common thing I hear about international is, it's amazing. I went to Vietnam and I saw this. I went to Italy and I saw that. Wrong. If you bring it all together, The country that is different is the USA, right? The country that is different is the USA, and I've got some examples here. One, we tend to have an older population than most other countries out there. I'm going to go through these very quickly. Secondly, this is a country that doesn't have the density of population that most other countries in the world has. The UK has 1/3 the US population, but is a country the size of Oregon. That shows the density. And that affects shopping patterns. You know, this is a country where people go and drive to stores. When I was at Blockbuster, I spent half my time explaining, in the UK, you walk to stores. If you go to Germany, people shop every single day. You know, here we drive, we go to the supermarket, we go to Home Depot, etc. It's a very different experience. And that goes on to another one that's different. So many people say to me, how many drive-thrus do you have in China? None. 80% of our new stores in the US have drive-thrus. Let's go on to a different subject. Taste profile. The US is an incredibly sweet tooth. And every time I go on TV or go somewhere and I talk about our donuts from China, say, where we had the shredded pork donut, the shredded chicken donut, everyone goes, oh my God. I can tell you, most people in the world like that over some of the things we have here. Here's another one. When I was writing this list, I really had to rack my brains, but here's one that I think is really interesting. If you go in a store in the US, you buy something for $100, you end up paying $105, $106, right? Only in the US. You go in a store anywhere else, you pay $100, that includes the tax. You know, that was one of the first things I really struggled with when I came here. Another one that's really pertinent to our business, we are the only country in the world where people get up at ridiculous times in the morning, and I'm one of the worst, by the way, and breakfast is really strong early in the morning. Our best hours are 7 to 8 and 8 to 9 in the morning. Doesn't happen anywhere else. Dunkin' Donuts focuses on the PM in every other country in the world. Large refrigerators. Only country in the world with large refrigerators because we have much bigger homes here. So that causes us an issue with ice cream cakes. Sports. This is the only country where you can be a world champion in one country. By the way, I support the Miami Dolphins, which I know is not popular here, but I also support the Miami Heat, so go Heat. So on more important subjects, everyone talks about regulation. This is the most flexible labour market in the whole world, and if you're going into international, you are not going to see the freedom you have here. You can't put people on short shifts and then bring them back later in the day. So that's one example. Employment at will, which I still can't get my head around, is an alien concept to anyone outside the US. Doesn't exist anywhere else. I mean, it's completely different. Short vacations. Though most of the world don't cheat by going off early on Fridays, but anyway. And I always remember my first week at Burger King in America, I couldn't understand why everyone kept going to the doctor. Doctor visits here take up half the time, it seems to me. And it's because you go there, you get all your checks, and you can never get out of the doctor's surgery in less than 2 hours. If you go to the UK, you have an appointment at 9:10, you see the doctor at 9:10, you're out at 9:15, and you're back at work at 9:30. I mean, completely different, and I think it's the same in most other countries, having been to doctors in other places. Another one that we all talk about is quarterly reports. Some countries now have quarterly reports, but if I had to make one change, I'd move it to what other countries do and have 6 monthly reports, because it really does drive short-term behavior. And a huge difference is most international markets, most, not just a few, think much more long-term than we do here in the US. You then move on to some other things, a high level of democracy, we could talk about that. But here's an interesting one. And I tried to find a study, I read a study when I was at college about context in language. Americans are very direct, but most other countries, the French and the Italians are very extreme on this. they put context in everything they describe. So they always have to position it where it was, the history, and then talk about it. We as Americans are incredibly direct. In fact, when I go back to the UK, people now say, why do you have to be so short on everything? But I think it's important to note that because most international markets spend a lot of time building relationships before they communicate. And the last one I thought you'd find interesting, based on my days in Blockbuster, censorship. This is a country that allows extreme violence on media, but doesn't allow sex. Showgirls was banned, as you know, in this country. But if you go into Germany, Terminator 2 was banned because of the violence. So there's a real difference there, and again, only in America. So anyway, just a few thoughts there. And I also wanted just to finish this section by saying, I think one of the things you should know is that the US is an incredibly difficult market for international people to come over here, and has certainly been a graveyard for many retailers. So the next thing I want to say is that whatever you do when you go international is surround yourself with the international mantra. And I would encourage everyone to talk about international every day, because there is a natural tendency in businesses to ignore international and just to focus on the domestic business. And it's encouraged by the analysts out there who tend to focus on domestic businesses. So you have to surround yourselves and think international. Recently, we had a review with China. We started the meeting at 4 o'clock in the morning. Why? Most American companies do it in the US time. How rude to those guys over there. So we started at 4. It was 4 p.m. their time. So we had a little bit of pain. They had a little bit of pain. But you have to think international in everything you do. Next one is find the right partners. This goes without saying. And we're fortunate in both our brands to have some great partners, spectacular partners around the world. And you need partners who really understand the country. Now, there is a tendency, I think, for most brands, and I've seen this in all the franchise companies with whom I've worked, that they tend to find someone from that country and think they're experts. Select the people as you would select a franchisee or a partner in the US. So don't just pick up the first person who comes in from Turkey and says they understand Turkey. You've got to really go through the same selection process that you do here in the US. One of the things we try and do is balance what we do with local and global. And we've worked very hard at our store design, and we have to make sure it's consistent with the brand image. I mean, here's some pictures. You can see here that you have the local language, you have the colors, the flavors, but at the same time, they don't look like the stores that you see here in Boston. It's very important. An image, I would say, is more important internationally than it is here in the US. So menus, this is a subject I spend a lot of time talking about that blend both Western and locally relevant product. We have, actually in Dunkin' Donuts, 11 core products that have to be on the menu anywhere in the world. One of the things that may surprise you is this great coffee that, thank you, most of you drink every morning. Most countries don't actually drink too much of it because they regard it as American coffee and they're very espresso based. But we still have it on the menu because it's the core of our brand. But we also have lots of local products. And when you look at this next list, I'm not going to run through it, you can see how we localize some of the products globally. So the whole phrase that I'm sure you've heard many times, think global, act local, is very important. And one of the things that I think one of our competitors, Yum, have done a spectacular job of doing is that products that have worked in certain countries, they brought back to the US. And I think that's a great trend because there is no doubt in the US there is a trend now to spicier food. There's a lot more ethnic foods that are acceptable in the US than several years ago. Now, this is an example of how we localize products for Korea.
Coffee, donut, Dunkin' Donut. Dunkin' Donuts.
So I'm not going to ask Mike Sheehan from Hill Holiday, wherever he is, down here, to comment on that, but it's a very different form of advertising as well from what you see here in the US. Now, an ad I really like, I'm going to show you a China Baskin-Robbins ad now. We've actually taken this ad, which was actually produced in a great city called Xi'an in China, and it's actually been used and localized in several Asian countries. So it's all about the flavors of our ice cream. Oh, sorry, let me go back. I'll go back. I think I inadvertently pressed too many buttons. Here we go.
每种青春都是一款冰淇淋。
青的、春的、苦的、爽的，哦哦，甜的、酸的，真的、美的，哦哦，啦啦啦啦啦啦啦啦啦啦啦啦。
一种青春，无数种快乐缤纷。巴斯罗宾冰淇淋，每月特惠15元。
Okay, so my background was in HR. I think this is an important subject about how you handle people. My head of HR is here today, Ginger Gregory, over there. One of the great things that Ginger has, she's worked internationally, not in our industry, other industries. And if you're going to go into international, you have to have people with international experience. It's no good saying, as I've seen happen so many times, I'm going to take this person, they've got high potential, go off and run international. Again, that's treating international like a blob. You need people who really understand it. So we're surrounding ourselves with people who have strong international experience. And at the same time, you need to manage people differently by country. I recently had an interview I did with the Herald Tribune about this. Managing people in France is very different from managing people in Japan. To give you an example. When I was with Massey Ferguson, I tried to implement in my HR days a performance appraisal program in France. They said it was an Anglo-Saxon plot. So be careful. In Japan and some other Asian countries, everything is done through the CEO. So it's very hierarchical and it goes all the way down. So, you know, be alert to these differences. And again, that's why you need international experience. But the same things apply. You have to deal with people properly, sensibly, and with great sensitivity. And going back to the point I made about context, it will take a lot more time dealing with international folk than typically here in the US. Stay close to our markets. I think it's important you make visits. You know, I'm going to talk about technology in a minute, and Bill Clinton talks about the cell phone being something that creates freedom. That's true. But don't give up on visiting the markets. One of the greatest things that's happened to Boston recently is this flight to Japan. It's taken 5.5 hours off my flights to Asia. So I think as we make this community much more international, one of the best things that can happen is more and more flights to places like Japan and China and wherever they're going next. So you have to get close to these markets. You have to understand it. You must hire locals. The days of having umpteen expats being sent around the world to countries are past. A, it's too expensive. I recognize that Deloitte probably loses some business on equalizing all the tax and the advice, but I think they can put up with that. But you need locals, but the downside of locals is they're now becoming incredibly expensive. We've got some great people. We pay them a lot of money because everyone else wants that small pool of people with experience working with international companies. Okay, I'm a technology freak. My office is my iPad, my computer, and my cell phone. Technology is making the world a lot closer. The fact that this is being seen in 64 countries, was it? Or 90 odd countries is amazing. So use the technology to your advantage. Talk to people all the time. It's cheaper now than it used to be. I remember the days when I was first in international. I used to go to an office in some place. I used to rush to the airport. I'd then knock all the other people out of the way to get to the cell phone, and then I'd pull out all these cards for different countries and use the phones at the airport. You've now got FaceTime, you've got Skype. It's cheaper than it's ever been. Use all the technology, because I really think that's important. Okay, so with that, I'd like to say that I think the message of what I try to communicate is international is difficult. International is tough. International requires resilience. And when I go back over my last few companies, I think of the mistakes that we made. I'm just going to take you through one country, which is the UK. Blockbuster. Oh, sorry, let's go back. Burger King bought Wimpy. And when I got involved there, it took us 2 years to sort out that acquisition because we hadn't done it right. I went to Blockbuster. We'd bought a brand over there, and it had 800 stores that weren't Blockbuster. We had to convert them all. That took a long time. We got it right in the end. Papa John's did the same thing. They bought a brand over there called Perfect Pizza that I always call was Imperfect Pizza. And they basically just rebranded it Papa John's. They had a cheap pizza chain that they made, one of the best pizza delivery chains in the world, Papa John's, high-quality pizza. And just by renaming it, they thought it would work. It was a nonsensical strategy, so I spent 2 years sorting that one out. So the message again and again is be careful, it ain't easy, and if you want one single piece of advice from me, if you're not sure, you're not willing to put the resources behind it, don't. Okay? So with that, I'll be delighted to take any questions. Oh, it's all obviously all clear.
Nigel, would you please use the mic because of the wedge? Sure.
So Bank of America, one of our great partners.
Thanks, Nigel. We feel the same. So you've talked a lot about global, but can you talk about where you are nationally? Because obviously you're still perceived to be concentrated in the Northeast and here and stuff, but
sure.
Is there still opportunity in the U.S. for Dunkin' as well?
Well, I'll talk about both brands. I mean, our domestic story is interesting. We're one of the few companies that have a real growth opportunity both domestically and internationally. If you take Dunkin' Donuts, we have just over 7,000 stores in the US. We feel we can have, within 20 years, 15,000. We can still grow 3,000 stores east of the Mississippi. We actually have some Western markets, Dallas, where we have a very nice relationship with Dallas Cowboys. We have Phoenix, Las Vegas, Kansas City, a few other markets. We have great new store economics in the Western markets, which was a big challenge when we did our IPO just a year and a quarter ago. We feel good about our development. So when people look at our company, they see us as a growth stock because of that phenomenal growth we have in the US as well as international. Baskin, its heartland is California. In fact, I'll be there next week because we're making a big announcement in California. We have over 500 stores there. And Baskin, in my view, was ignored for several years. It's still a very slow declining brand in terms of store numbers year by year. I think in the next 2 years it'll become a growth brand again. We're excited about that. So I think the answer is that domestically we've got two growth opportunities, Dunkin' and Baskin. Please, lady here.
Hi, my name is Priscilla Douglas. My favorite is the honey dipstick, the cruller.
Wow.
And I wonder, in terms of, I'd like to find out how you were able to keep Krispy Kreme. I would like to hear the backstory about Krispy Kreme floundering in terms of coming into Boston or failing.
Well, actually, I think that actually happened before my time. And to be honest, I've never really discussed Krispy Kreme in Boston, but I think what happened generally with Krispy Kreme, who, by the way, I think are doing a pretty nice revitalization job at the moment, is that Donuts don't tend to be the highest margin. I mean, beverages is our highest margin. If you actually go through the league table of margins, the highest is beverages. I can't tell you because it frighten you how much the margin is on that. Oh, you'd be asking for 10th price coffee, but anyway. The second one is breakfast sandwiches, which, again, are very high margins, but they're the glue that take people into the beverages. So they didn't have that. Their new CEO has developed his own coffee. I think that was, my view, a smart move. Doesn't stop us being very competitive with them. But I think it's really the fact that you can't just focus on donuts and roll out a chain. They got a store, I know it's not your question, they got a store in the middle of Shanghai, which is a beautiful store, big store, but it's basically a commissary, and they've never opened another one. So, I mean, their model is, I think, tough to operate. It seems that new management's doing different things, but great donuts, not as good as ours, but great donuts. But they've done some smart things. I mean, they're in the supermarkets with Tesco in the UK, so we see them as a competitor. But day to day, our big competition we see is Starbucks and McDonald's. Gentleman over there. By the way, I met my wife in Fiji just to prove that international is important.
Nigel, Chris Harding with Mobiquity. Thank you for the presentation. I thought it was excellent. A lot of good lessons in there. I'm curious, you touched upon mobile and what it means to your various brands moving forward. I'd love to get a little bit more insight. What does it mean for the brand experience, the in-store experience, et cetera?
Okay, so you got onto one of my favorite subjects. So on your table, you'll see about our new app. Here we are. And I'll talk while I'm banging in my password, which these corporate IT folk make you do. But the app is a very important part of our future. It's revolutionizing shopping. This is the Dunkin app. There's my card there, and I can pay. I think it's going to probably improve each transaction by 5-6 seconds. One of the things that's important to our franchisees is, for Bank of America, this may be bad news, it's actually cheaper for our franchisees to do it on here than to do it with credit cards by some amount. It's also getting us into an area that I'm very interested in. When I was at Blockbuster and Papa John's, by the definition of the industry, we knew everything about every customer. We knew where they lived, we knew their phone number, we knew what pizza they liked, we knew which videos they watched, all that kind of stuff. In quick service restaurants, you don't. So this is going to get us into one-to-one marketing. We're just about to launch our loyalty program. This will give us the opportunity to do offers. So if I send you an offer, we'll know whether you used it or not. We can then refine the offer. So the days of mass communication will be changed to one-on-one marketing. So this is significant. But linking it back to the international presentation, despite the fact that there's more cell phones in this country than population, the US is still behind the rest of the world. I think we're catching up very quickly, but this is the future. Bill Clinton talks in his article about how in places in Africa, it's really revolutionized how people act. I mean, people in, I think it was Rwanda, it may not be, I think he says in Rwanda, oh no, sorry, it was Haiti, that's right. In Haiti, they can now get loans because they got cell phones. So this is the future, and it's going to revolutionize retailing, and obviously the internet's revolutionized how people select products. I'm on the board of Office Depot, and probably our biggest competitor is Amazon. A lot of really interesting strategic issues there globally again. So this is so critical, and Joseph taught me a good lesson this morning. He said that he got his iPhone 5 yesterday. So, and by the way, beautiful product. And he didn't accept the university's help in downloading everything. He did it himself. That's what you've got to do. You've got to understand this. And if you're an old person like me at 62, you've got to think how kids think, because that's the future. I'm fortunate that I've got a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old, and it's amazing what they can do. So, I really encourage you to think about this because this is going to revolutionize everything we do. It's the way you pay at stores. I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs now, they come to my house, they just scan with the iPhone. And here's an interesting thing. Any people from IT in the audience? Okay, so I can say it. Our IT people came to me 2 weeks ago and said, we want to develop this big new program so that everyone can sign remotely. So I said, well, how much is it going to cost? So they said 100,000. I said, okay. Why don't you use the Sign Now app? And they said, what's that? So I said, well, it's actually free. And I sign all my documents now with the Sign Now app, which is something you can download. You can actually pay a little bit for a more sophisticated version. But I think, I'd be careful because the world's changing. Apps are the future. And I think it's critical that you get away from some of the big legacy systems that IT people tend to give you. Any more?
Good morning, Richard Diagazio, and I used to work for an international banking consortium, and I understand the hiring local, but there has to be a lot of interaction with the home office. Mm-hmm. And what do you do about training, especially cultural training, which is very, very important?
Yeah, a great and again complicated subject. Thank you, Richard. Well, I think when I got to the company, I described us as world-class at bad training. And I think under Ginger's leadership, we've become world-class at good training. So we've still got some way to go. But we train our people. We tend, I think one of the things with brands is you've got to remember what is the heart of the brand. The heart for Dunkin' Donuts is here in this area. The heart of Baskin-Robbins is in California. So they must come here. The way we used to train franchisees is, and this is a true example, we'd start up with someone in China, we'd send them to Lebanon or to Dubai to be trained. Well, by definition, that's already a diluted version of the brand. So they have to come here. So that's the first thing we do. I think the cultural training piece is something that's a very interesting subject. I think most companies, including ours, can do a lot better job at it. But when I worked for Grand Met, which was just before I went to Burger King, we did a very interesting exercise because we brought people in from all our portfolio companies, which were companies in those days like Intercontinental Hotels, Alpo, Pearl Vision, a bunch of drinks companies in the UK, a milk company and so on. So we brought them all into Paris, and I will never forget, I started off by saying, okay, so let's introduce each other. So everyone introduced them, and I said, right, here's the first exercise. You have 3 hours to go around Paris and research your industry and come back and do 2 flip charts. One is what you learnt about your industry, and the other was how you felt. Well, the first thing that happened is no one moved, because you never go to a seminar where you're sent out immediately, right? So I had to repeat it 3 times. So finally we got them out of the room. We found that 8/10 of the people didn't know where they were. Obviously they didn't speak French or anything like that. But very quickly, when they came back, and the chart we really wanted was how you felt. We heard words like, I felt isolated, frustrated, awkward, etc. That's exactly what we wanted, because international is difficult and you've got to be culturally sensitive. What was, I have to say, quite amazing was that some people actually did some amazing achievements during their 3 hours. One guy from HR actually met the top individual in a reward consulting firm in the middle of Paris. One was propositioned by 4 prostitutes. But the point is, being an international is very difficult. Cultural training, I think, is very important. And we, along with other companies, Ginger, we need to note this, don't do a good enough job.
Nigel, we still have time for the last question, so I'm taking the executive privilege of asking you that. You hinted at the franchisees. Why did you go into this model, and how is it working for you?
Well, it's the first thing I'll say, I love being in the franchising world. We have 2,000 franchisees around the world. These are entrepreneurs. This is what most people believe is the future of America. I think because of my HR background, I kind of like the challenge. I mean, with our franchisees, we have some really vigorous debates, if it could be said politely like that. But it's fun. And the example I was using to Joseph earlier is if you take this bottle of Fiji water, which of course is expensive water, so let's say that's $3. If we were in Target or Walmart or even Walgreens, and we as management decided we wanted to really promote a value proposition on Fiji water, we'd bang a few buttons and all the systems would then tell the stores the next day, this is $2. Can't do that in the franchising world. You may decide you're going down the value orientation, but you need to go out and firstly convince them that change is needed. That's the first point. So it's a big attitude change. You then need to come up with an offer and have it voted on. So you may find that Miami agrees with it, but Boston doesn't. That's quite a common occurrence, by the way. So just think how long all that takes. So you have to be great at interpersonal relationships. You have to be able to think about the other side of the story. And another speech I do is on franchising, and very quickly, there's a great article written about the pluralistic frame of reference in labor relations by a gentleman called Alan Fox that I studied at college. I use this in franchising because if you think about it, we're all interested in profit. But in the franchising world, my profit can take away from the franchisee's profit. You need to recognize that. And too many people say, we're all in this together. We're not. We're stealing their profit and they're stealing ours. So just recognize the reality of it and life becomes a lot easier. It's how you bridge those differences. It's the set of assumptions that you work on. So bottom line is franchising is difficult. You need excellent communication skills. You need brilliant listening skills. And it's tough. And, I love it. You got this.
No, I want more than that. I want to give you first, we are going to barter a little bit. Can I keep your card? And can I have access to your security code on your app?
Yeah.
And and then what I'm going to give you as a counterpart is a globe.
Oh, thank you very much. A globe's very important to me.
And also a free application to Northeastern for your children, 5 and 7.
If it's really good value, we'll be there.
Great.
Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Nigel. Would you like your Time magazine back too?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's quite all right. Well managed. Thank you. Thank you. Let me mention that our next CEO breakfast will be held in London. That would be a first that we're launching a CEO breakfast in London too with our alumni there. And it will be held on October 26th at the Savoy. And we will have the CEO of Compass Group speaking there. So see you all there, and we'll be back here in Boston in December. And I hope you enjoyed your day. I thought that, Nigel, you did a fantastic job. You seem to be multi-talented, and I think you're a great teacher. And if you want to lecture for free at Northeastern, don't ask me for more than that. I think you're always welcome. We can ask you to do it on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So thank you very much, and have a great day. Yes. Excuse me, before you leave, those are for you all. It's a gift from Nigel. It's a personal gift from Nigel. And how much do we have in this card here, Nigel? $5. My God, it's worth $5. Thank you. And the coffee too. Come here, do it yourself.
If you pick up your bags, one of you has a little sticker on the other side. you win a Keurig brewer.
Oh.
Who's got it? Oh, by the way, you can't be a employee of the university or Dunkin brands. So pass it to the right if you are, but lady there,
You have it? My God.
here we are.
Are you an employee of the university? No, I know you're not. Thank you. Great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Great job. Thank you.